Hey, we have with us tonight Jack Churchward, who throughout his life has had many ask about his great-grandfather's work, which has led him to setting the record straight about the lost continent of Mu.
Welcome to the Three Beards podcast. My name is Craig, along with Austin and Chris.
Passed to a new generation of Americans born in this century.
Let me out.
I'm afraid that is quite impossible. I need you.
Then live to send the innocent to their death? Is this justice and honor in Massachusetts colony?
All right, everybody. So we're back, and at this time, I would like to welcome to the show Jack Churchward. How are you, sir?
Just fine.
Well, it's a little bio on Jack here. He is 6-year U.S. Navy veteran, 40 years experience in the aerospace and defense industry, engineer, patent holder, which I thought was pretty cool myself. And then just between activist, researcher, you name the list, you have it. He's fellow resident of the great state of Florida. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, gentlemen.
So we brought you on. We wanted to, it was some of the topics, the lost continent of Mu. You know, your great grandfather, Colonel James Churchward, really, it would say pioneered this topic. It was originally, my name is failing me right now. How to spell it. It was a few years prior to your great grandfather. It was the first time it was hypothesized that this was an actual continent that existed out there, but it wasn't until your great grandfather went over towards the Orient, India, Sri Lanka, that this actually really came to fruition through the writings in the 1920s when he started putting out a lot of books. And so I'll kind of let you take it from there. And kind of how this all came about with your great grandfather.
Well, thank you for having me on. If you're talking about Schlechter, who hypothesized about the continent of Lemuria in the Indian Ocean.
Yes.
And then it was the jumping off point for in theosophy. Actually, there was a few more suggestions about Lemurians. The Lemurians were some kind of not quite yet humanoid creature in theosophy and in the book of Dizan. Not that my great-grandfather had anything to do with theosophy, although some people accuse him of it. But he believed that there was a large continent in the Pacific Ocean with 64 million people that lived and eventually went around the world and colonized and civilized everybody. But when you think of that, if they're leaving where everybody has the same equality, everybody has the same life, and nobody's hungry, and they have mental abilities and whatnot, why would they go someplace else, and who would they run into to be able to bring them civilization? Wouldn't that civilization have come from the motherland of men, which my great-grandfather called the lost continent of Mu?
Exactly. Yeah, that was one of the things I wanted to ask you, because that's one thing I agree with you completely. It's like we're going around sharing this thing off, but if the story is correct, it all came from there. So who are you giving your information to, bringing your technology to, if you already have it? It
Exactly.
should just be spread. So,
like his hypothesis that the Mongols were the ones that conquered America and drove out all the Mayans, the white people that lived in Central America, and chased them away. But if they all came from Mu, how did the Mongols? Why did the Mongols have to fight with them? And why did the Mongols even? How did they get there? I mean,
yeah.
with a large army, how many thousands of years would it take to migrate them all over there?
And I just put up on the screen share. It's like, this is where the one of the rumored drawings of that lost continent of Mu. So you can see it stretches basically from Easter Island all the way, pretty close to Malaysia and Indonesia.
Harlan had a question. She asked if we'll ever restore the land of Mu. Sorry.
I don't believe it ever existed, but I don't think that the land of Mu is, as described by my great grandfather, is real. So as far as restoring something that didn't exist, I don't think so.
Probably the closest thing to that would be kind of like you really great is just where his thing is that we are all this, related in humanity.
Well, yes.
And that way it's like in restoring. I think we could probably do that at some point to where maybe get it to the point like his idea is like where we all can see that point that we're all the same and not,
that we're all from the same source. Yes.
So I would go with that one, Harlan. It's like that's probably where we would be looking at for that. But yeah, it was just as we went through.
That would be the only thing of his writings that I unequivocally agree with.
And that was one of the questions I had for you too. Is so because you released the cup, you have get right here, so that way I make sure I've got the book names exactly right here because I you have the lost, you had Lifting the Veil on the Lost Continent of Mu, the Motherland of Men, the Stone Tablets of Mu, and Crossing the Sands of Time.
Mm-hmm.
And then you also had a couple of, I think some other ones like the Lost Gems, Lost Continent of Mu. You had those.
Some things from his scrapbooks that I scraped together, and they're available as PDFs if you want. I haven't gone to the ebook yet with them.
So now on those ones, did you approach this kind of like with your thing to where it was more of an academic perspective where, okay, here's what he claimed, I found these stone tablets. Okay, now let's go research what these stone tablets are. What, break these things down, just because he was the one, without really trashing to me, like Joseph Smith. I found the golden tablets. I was the one that was able to translate them. Nobody's seen them. So
Exactly.
You just have to take my word for it that I wrote them all down on this piece of paper, and this is what they told me. So did you?
Well, Lifting the Veil on the Lost Continent of Mu, Motherland of Men, is an examination of his books, of that first book that he wrote in 1926. And I wanted to look at all the writers that he quoted, all the quotations, and all the literary works that he looked at. So I wanted to make sure that, look at who he was talking about. Did they have any expertise in that area to be able to discuss those things? That was my thought. And so I created the book. I included the original, so all the text is there, all the pictures are there that you can see. And there's an appendix on the writers and the books that are included, and an index.
Yeah, and I really liked how the way you approached that, because it was one of the thoughts, like to me, kind of with the way that you did in some of your books and stuff. Is this something kind of like how L. Ron Hubbard, such a prolific science fiction writer, somebody who wrote so many books. You know, he ended up creating basically this, I don't know if mythos is the right wording for it. He created this entire, you know, just universe around these writings. Did your great grandfather, do you feel like this just became, it was, I don't know, is obsession the right way to go, but it just became to this point to where this was his, and he just kept expanding the universe to this thing, finding these things that would fit that narrative?
Well, supposedly he says he found these tablets, the Nikal tablets, and had his time in India with the Rishi in the late 1870s. Why would he wait until the 1920s to reveal all this supposedly amazing information?
Yeah, you beat me to one of my questions.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, that's it. That was exactly it. Because you're right. It's one of those things. I mean, this is one of those. It seems like it would be just immediately. Like, I've got to put this out and get this out in academia. And look what I just discovered.
But it's the same. It's the same in the book of Daizan by Madame Blavatsky. You named Mr. Smith, and I won't talk about the other guy. But okay.
I know. Especially you're close to him. Yeah, it's one of those. You got to be careful with that topic. Then it's like they've got their feelers everywhere. So that was in those ones, like the discovery of those tablets that we talked about. Did you talked about where a few of those tablets were kind of like I think, was it a pumice?
Yes.
A stone that could easily have been carved. So that could
actually
easily be
quite
faked.
more than one.
All right, so that's really hard to show, a dating, like these are ancient tablets when it could easily be manufactured right before you show up to hand you these tablets.
Well, no, they don't believe they did that, but they did hand over these tablets. They would dig for him 5 days a week, and then Niven went out there on the weekends to supervise or whatever, and during the week if everything they found they'd put off to the side, and he'd pay them for it. One thing that about the stones, and Chris Niven, one of his great grandsons, gave me one, sent it to me, is that if you were going to write a symbol that had religious significance and meant something to you, you would find a rock big enough to inscribe it on, rather than write it on the top and around the sides and up and around. That's one of the things that I have about this supposed Nikal tablets found in Mexico, the Mu stones, as others refer to them as.
Yeah, that's a great point, because some of the actual archaeological finds, they've either worked the natural crystal structures of the stones into those symbols. They've actually done it on the thing to where the entire surface, you're going to see the symbol right there. You're not going to see it just winding wherever they could. Like, oh crap, I ran out of room. Yeah. All right, flip it over, keep carving. Yeah. And
if I might, I was recently in another interview, and it was highly edited, and I wanted to make mention that I did make a mistake in my stone tablets of Mu. I did not dig deep enough and found that there were actually there were individuals who had researched the subject and had come to the conclusion that some of them might have been hoaxes. Unfortunately, I did not mention that in my book, so I'm going to come clean now.
We're not going to edit that out. That's nice. So you say some of them were hoaxed, and where did they get established as hoaxed? Who called them out on their hoaxed?
Well, this was Dr. It's on the Stone Tablets of Mu website. What did I do? I recorded an interview with a professional archaeologist, and he provided me the evidence, such as the fact that they're all made out of pumice, and somebody could take their pocket knife out of their back pocket and make themselves an artifact in 30 seconds or less. The fact that they wouldn't have lasted 10,000 years like they're trying to say. Another thing is they wouldn't, there's just a whole bunch of, the fact that the symbols don't appear on the top of a flat surface when you would hope that they would be useful. And then again, you only have one symbol per rock. So these are things that kind of convinced me that didn't work.
It was estimated that there was like 64 million people, right? On the lost continent of Mu, right?
That's correct. Then they died in one day.
So all 64 million people died in one day.
Oh, no. There were on the continent. There were others that had traveled to the different outposts, such as the Great Uyghur Empire that James thought that was there. There are even more people in the Great Uyghur Empire.
Thank you for clearing that up.
Yeah, some of the stuff that was kind of what I was getting at with the stones, like where I wasn't saying that James Churchward made these ones up. It's kind of like if you've ever seen like the faked artifacts that people have manufactured and given to somebody like archaeologist, researcher. That's one of those things, especially if you make that a pomace. If you tell somebody, I'm looking for these things and I'm paying you when you find these things, they're going to find them all day long.
All 2,500.
Yep. Every time we open up another rock, oh my God, I found another 12. Do you want them? Yes. and that's why I said, you got some there, make it look like a bird. Okay. And you start carving it into the stone. That's kind of what I was getting at. It's not that those two were making them, but it seems like it really sets up the avenue for fraud in that way.
Well, James had nothing to do with it. James used the work that Niven had already Niven's discoveries of the Mu stones. It's not to say his other discoveries don't mean anything. He found some incense burners and some other tablets that have been verified and statues, and they're they're in museums now. I mean, he didn't only find the Mu stones. Now, I missed the question.
Oh no, it was one of those. It was, there's talk of whether Mu was India or Hawaii. He was like, what? She was asked, what's your take on that? Both cultures are similar, laid back.
When I was stationed in Bermuda for 3 years, and it was pretty laid back there too. Island life is, without all the technology, island life is very relaxing. So as far as whether it was, I can imagine Hawaii is very laid back because they can get laid back there, and India doesn't have the high technology and everybody rushing around every day and doing what they need, what they have to do here. So I don't think Mu was in India or in Hawaii.
Now, do you find, because that was one of the ones like I really wanted to get to you too, is because that was the thing, where did they get it right, where did they get it wrong? Do you find that there's anything through your reworking your great grandfather's stuff that you found like, okay, this turns out like there might have been something here. I don't agree with the overall concept of it, but okay, we found this sunken city over here. This could have been part of a civilization. I don't think it was one that spanned the Pacific Ocean, but there might have been something here, and that it's in a way he did. You throw enough darts, something you're going to hit something.
Well, about the only thing that I'm agree with without hesitation is the fact that we're all human together, and that's the basis of it. And so the rest beyond that, he stole. Well, he didn't steal. He purloined a bunch of things from Le Plongeon. Le Plongeon said it was in Central Asia or Central America, I'm sorry, and James just grabbed his Mu and stuck it over in the Pacific. And most of the stuff that he wrote, you can find in the Egyptian Sphinx, and Le Plongeon's books.
So that's So that
Queen Mu and the Egyptian Sphinx, but there's a couple more.
And that was kind of what, on that one, which is whether or not you had, if there's been any archaeological finds that have kind of backed up some of his claims. I mean, this is because you could get it right. If you say there's lost civilization here, and we find a sunken city. I mean, you could hang your hat like, see, I told you. But when you said it spans the entire Pacific Ocean, finding one sunken city is not going to be, the smoking gun that I was correct. So it's, that was where, prior to the show starting, that's where I told you, it's like, I really like the approach, is because I'm one of those, if you can take out everything that we can prove and we can show that isn't real, isn't right, and move it aside, what's left over, now we have something that we can look into, and we can actually apply something to it. Because if we just accept any claim that's out there, we all look crazy to somebody who comes from a scientific side. Like, I know if I drop this, it falls. But you're claiming that if I've watched all these, I have 75 of these floating in my room with me every day. You're like, you're like, wow, that's amazing. No, that's not real. They made it up. I mean, it literally, it falls. It's like you have to go with those things. And then once you get past that side, anything that does happen, now we have a paranormal event. Now we have an archaeological thing, because it's here. Where did it come from? Was this an ancient Polynesian culture that made this, and then through seismic activity, this one sank, through thing, and that's kind of where I really got with your work. I was really enjoying the way that you broke it down. You preserved your great grandfather's work, which is really fantastic with what you've done there, because it's basically you're letting the audience decide. I think
I don't want to tell anybody how to think.
I think was there an interview? I might have been with Mark Edinburgh, where you said it's just basically, I'll let people make up their own mind. If they want to believe in it, that's, believe in it. But, it's like, it's there, just, there for you to read.
Absolutely. I don't want to tell anybody how to think. That's not up to me. But I can provide them the information so they can make informed choices. Because most of the books that are written on this subject completely ignore things like plate tectonics and things like that.
It's not a granite honeycomb full of gas that just simultaneously exploded and sank all in one night. That was the greatest claim. I was like, wow, can you imagine just the sheer effect that would have on the globe if an entire continent that size just overnight sank?
Well, the Archean gas belts that nobody else ever heard of, but they run through, but that's, you see, Atlantis was also a colony of Mu at the same time, and sunk with the collapse of the Archean gas belts. Yeah, that was one of those. Whenever you hear some of the claims, I've always just gone to that. It's just like the sheer, that was an extinction level event if that happened across the globe. If you were to have because that would have changed everything. Ocean patterns, atmospheric patterns, everything would have instantly just stopped. Well, another part of the theory is that when that happened and they sunk, that's when the mountains were raised. And so how do you, when the mountains are raised, well, like only 11 or 12,000 years ago, that just boggles the mind.
Yeah, that doesn't account for layering.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, that's pretty clear. All those layers of top, soil and other, fine materials that have been deposited over time. So yeah, that was, and then one of the other ones, like I think it's your latest book, The Crossing the Sands of Time. That was the one that you, if I'm not mistaken, that's your latest one, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, that's Uyghur. Is that how you say that?
Uyghur.
Uyghur.
Most people say Uyghur, but the Uyghurs say Uyghur.
Well, I'm going to go with what they say. That would
Okay.
be yeah. So So they now talk about your work with Eric, because this is one you sent me a PDF on this one, and you really I like the way that this one's laid out in this book. I really do.
Well, all I did was I've interacted with the Uyghur American Association and my Uyghur friends, and a few years ago, someone handed me a copy of an Uyghur language copy of the Lost Continent of Mu, and that told me, "Do you know about this history?" And that's one of the reasons I got into researching it. So when the stark difference between the history quoted in my great-grandfather's works and the real history that's written down that you can actually discover in the archaeological record, all combined to say what James wrote about the Uyghur Empire is completely wrong. So I went from my approach was to provide a history, an early history of Central Asia or Inner Asia and the people and the Uyghur, where they came from, what they became, and where they are today. From there, I went through my great-grandfather's theories and other people that tried to use his theories that are absolutely outrageous.
Yeah, I was trying to look for an image here for it too, and that's the East Turkestan, isn't it?
East Turkestan, yes.
Yeah, and that's right on.
That's Chinese call it Xinjiang.
Okay, so that was one of the territories taken by the Chinese.
Correct, in the 1860s.
Kind of long. So that was
by the Shang dynasty, the Manchu.
And it's mostly predominant Muslim faith, isn't it? With that community. Yeah. So that's. Then I think this is the image, like I was where, like one of the ones that was oh God, that's an image for ants. Look at this thing. I'll still show it up there, but everybody bring out your magnifying glasses so you can see this image I just brought up on the screen. Good God.
And Google does that. It's really annoying.
No, that's the real Uyghur Empire, or is that the Mongol Empire?
Well, there's the Mongol ones right about, and then you have the Uyghur, and then you have Tibet, and then the white right below it. Like I said, I apologize. It's such an amazingly large photo. Yeah. So now that was what was considered the actual size of it, correct, and not what I'm trying to bring up that image. What was considered like the great one, where it looked like it spanned most of that side of Asia. I think this is as I'm bringing up this one, hopefully this is the one of the ones where I had these things all laid out, and hopefully I'm grabbing the right ones. Is this the one where they claim like the Great Empire, where it spans almost all of Asia into the Middle East?
Mm-hmm. Yes. That's the Mongol Empire.
Yeah, so this one, they were the ones that were purported by your great-grandfather to have been the inhabitants of Mu, correct? And then they were spread out from there.
They were from Mu and formed the colony that they called the Great Uyghur Empire, and they did that 100,000 years ago, and it was at its height 17,000 years ago. But if you look at the archaeological record, the evidence indicates that they didn't have a great Uyghur Empire back then. I mean, in James' idea, you had dinosaurs still roaming of the flat plains of the Asian continent because the mountains hadn't been raised. The dinosaurs were still around. And so I'm wondering, what would people, how would people get out of a stampede of wild mammoths or, or mastodons or brontosaurus come trampling through your town?
Yeah, flattening everything. And you said it, I think, in an interview as well, where you talked about, if that's the case, why are we building like that? They just found that discovery of the one made from mammoth bones.
Mm-hmm.
Why are we doing that if we were roaming here? Wouldn't that have just been a stone structure, like an actual permanent, building? Why are you making a mammoth bone hut?
Exactly.
And I agree completely, because the oldest thing that I know that they've said at this point is Göbekli Tepe. 11,000 years, where they've looked at that one. This area, and so these claims like for Mu, we're talking, 40,000 years earlier,
mm-hmm.
and
more.
Where the stone structures, there should be something like an actual, major
they
structure.
had an empire.
Yeah, Empire mammoth bone huts.
Yes.
Yeah. And then,
and another thing is that the megaliths. A lot of people mention that who could have moved these great big stones and built all these great big things out of stone. But if you go and type in megalithic structures or megalithic sculptures into YouTube, or you can find all kinds of videos of people, megalithic cultures today, that are moving things. 10-ton stones, they just get all the people out and then they drag it to where they want it. So to say we couldn't have done it previously is just, you're not telling the whole story.
Yeah, because didn't they even recently, within the past couple of, I think it's actually been longer than that, date myself here, where they actually walked a stone, like the Easter Island.
The Moai, yes. They walked
to show
the Moai.
That it would have been possible to basically just do this rocking motion and get it to where, and actually move the stone into place.
Correct. And there's there are hypotheses that say that's what they did. Of course, there's also people who say that they used their mental energy or sound and moved them. But I prefer to believe in walking them there.
Yeah, and some of the ones, like I know, like the same mystery is like the Great Pyramids, just that precision cut. That's the mystery. I mean, we've had several people on that they've got the theories like how they were put there. I mean, one that I really liked was a lock system. If it floated the blocks, floated them into place, set them down. The one that's the piece that a lot of people still like that is, how did they do that precision cuts? That's the ones that's amazing. Like these, when you're coming to some of those stone walls where they're just perfect fits. That's the part that I would love to solve as a mystery, is that because we figured out the ingenuity of humankind is we can move stuff. We can put it in place. It's just, how did they make these perfect, almost like mortar, flat level fits, which is impressive.
I just saw a video of someone demonstrating that. An archaeologist went into an old quarry and was picking up the stones that were there, the ones that he used, that they had used, that he had just dropped how many ever 1,000 years ago, and he showed that he could just using their stones just form the stones the way they wanted.
Interesting.
Well, that's great. Yeah, incredible. Yeah, and so it's one of those, because I think that's one of the things everybody wants a sensational, like it had to be aliens. Had to be aliens that came down and use their technology to create these things. And I think it really discounts the level of ingenuity of humanity. I mean, Dennis Stone was on here with America's Stonehenge, the megalithic structures up there in Salem, New Hampshire, showing the same thing, like all these chambers that were made. I mean, just saying that there's an alien spacecraft that came down and deposited all these rocks and these things and then flew away discounts the civilization that 2,000, potentially almost 4,000 years ago laid these stones out.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's kind of, before we get too far, and that's kind of where the claims, like your great grandfather basically made, it's one of those, it sounds amazing. It's one that's definitely, it would have some show behind it, where it makes some great images to show. But right now we don't have the physical evidence to back the claim up, which is
extraordinary. Claims require extraordinary evidence.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's one of those. So I'm going to assume, just extrapolating from it, you're not a big believer in the Atlantis theory either.
I'm not sure Atlantis was. I'm not sure. No, I don't believe it was in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. Could there have been something on? I knew the island, but slipped my mind just now. But yeah, it could have been on an island that it got blown up by a volcano.
That's because I know that's theories, kind of like you said with Plato. He talked about it, and for me, I mean, that's grown up. That's always been one of those things, like, the lost city of Atlantis. How cool would that be to find it? And just seeing these things, and it's just like, as you get up here, it's like, I really want to see the evidence, but to me, it's more and more, it's looking like he found pieces of just an incredible Polynesian South Pacific culture that kind of spread through boat travel more than land, crossing a flat plain across the Great Pacific, on a massive island.
The Hokulea. And it's a Polynesian vessel that they go hundreds of miles or thousands of miles without compasses, without GPS. And thank you, Mark. It was Santorini. Plato could have been writing about Santorini.
Oh yeah, thanks, Mark, for that. Yeah, appreciate it. And then I have another one here. I don't know if you guys had one while I'm trying to find that there, but they're in East Turkestan. I think the name that they changed it to
Xinjiang, which means New Dominion.
Of course it does. Of course it does. We'll leave it at that. Yeah, of course that's what it means. Have they found any? Is there any correlation between, like, your grandfather's work and what they have there, like commonality and symbolism, or anything that would lead somebody to, to still maintain that these are in fact the former inhabitants of Mu?
Negative.
Okay, so that's a problem.
Well, James even wrote that the capital of the great Uyghur Empire was thousands of miles away from where the Uyghur people live today. Well far away. During the Uyghur people used to live in what is now Mongolia, and the great Uyghur Empire, then when they were chased out by the Kyrgyz people, went into the oases of the Tarim Basin, which is in Xinjiang, southern Xinjiang.
So are they more related to the Mongols and stuff? I mean, are they more of a related that way ethnically?
They're Turkic people. Some people claim the Mongols as Turks, but they were originally a nomadic people who, when they moved to the southern oases of Xinjiang, eastern Turkestan. That there were already people living there, the Sogdians, the Persians, and so they intermarried and they turned to Buddhism. Subsequently, in the 15th century, they turned to the worship of Muhammad.
Okay, that's and then question, like I think I found the question here. I appreciate was there any Native American folklore that's people would show like a support the existence of something along the lines of like Mu or something, because you think that would also be there if you'd have inhabitants from here coming over to the Americas.
James wrote a whole chapter on it of things that he found that proved it, but I can't see that it means anything.
So once again, yeah, you just have one after another where there would have to be something along the the West coastline going all down. If there was this thing, it'd be a small boat ride.
It was the interpretation of his interpretation of symbols to prove the lost continent of Mu.
Yeah, and there's 1 years ago I saw I think that was history Jewish artwork from Japan. Now I wonder if that would be somebody coming over from Middle East over towards Japan. I'm not sure.
Possible.
Yeah, possible. So and I think in an interview too, you talked about like one of the things like, in order for them to have made it over to South America that way, would they have had to come all the way in the land bridge? And that'd be a massive undertaking of travel.
Migration.
Yeah.
I mean, look what they have to bring all their food. They have to bring all their pack animals. They'd probably have 2 or 3 generations on the way.
Yeah. Well, you would have deposits of archaeological evidence the entire way, because they're going to have to stop. They're going to have to set up settlements. You would find something in that down there that would have to be like, this doesn't make any sense. You'd have a place where they would carve a symbol. If they had an encampment, for a port or anything, there would have to be symbols around there, especially if these were sacred symbols. I sort of move that you'd have something in Mexico, South America, lower portions of West Coast, and there'd be something that would have to be there to back this up.
I'm right there with you.
All right, and then one of the things too is, do you, for any other questions, like is there any modern day evidence that has shown the existence of a different type, race of people that's not explained? Just through DNA.
I read something not too many years ago that said that they found DNA that represented human, Denisovian, and one unknown hominid.
But definitely not something that could be like that could be looked at as an inhabitant of a lost continent.
James never said they weren't human.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Just thinking out, just stuff where what could, people, especially the ones that are firm believers in this, that no, this does exist, that, there would have to be some evidence to show that, we came from this. I mean, maybe that's where the thing like, we all share the common DNA. The chromosome, maybe that's, but it doesn't. It's just like you said, the other part, we walked amongst the dinosaurs. I mean, I've watched enough Jurassic Park movies. I don't think that would work. Yeah, they've even I don't know if you guys saw this little side note. Did you guys see that they're actually thinking that we're a couple years away from where they think that they can actually do that?
I'm down.
Like start. And so, yeah, that's one of those. So we kind of, it's a little more topic. Like you you with your passions, like I said, I know you are a Tibetan Buddhist, correct?
I identify as that. Yes.
That's awesome. It's one of those. I have a friend who's he's Buddhist. He's same thing too. And so when did you come to become a follower of Buddhism?
The late 80s.
Okay. So has that had a really meaningful impact on your life after becoming Buddhist? Because it really did for my friend.
Well, I'm sure. I've always tried to act that way, though. I'm not tried to be a pushy person or tried to get along, and
Yeah,
it fit my what was going on in my brain rather much better than the Christianity and other religious entities that are out there.
that sounds really familiar to like the same thing, like his type of thing. It was one of those looking around. This is the one that just really fit. It was just one. It's like as soon as he got involved in it, it's like it clicked. He's like, this is what, it feels right. I mean, that's what it should be. I mean, it's just if you're involved, it should feel like that's what you're supposed to be doing. And he really enjoyed it. I'm not sure if what apologize for that. I'm not sure how you refer to it, like the different variations of Buddhism. I know he's Buddhist. I just not sure what part, if it's called a part, or you can help me with that. I'm not sure where yes. So I'm not sure where he goes on that spectrum, but he's definitely. So I wanted to kind of touch with that on you, and that if that's really had an impact with your activism, is really it seems like such a harsh word. It seems like like radical. It's like in just your outreach to other other areas of the planet than just here at home.
I'm not sure that it is helps, because I'm not very Buddhist-like sometimes when confronted. So I if somebody's mean to me, I'm not very Buddhist back to them.
But isn't that human nature, though?
I'll give them the benefit of the doubt, but after a certain point, you have to draw a line, and otherwise you're just letting them bully you, and I'm not going to put up with that.
Oh no, you got to stand up for yourself. But I think it's how, after you've done that, it's like how you act after that is where the key is. Showing restraint, showing how you handle those things. But no, I agree. I mean, it's some of the ones, like, we won't get into it too much because I know it's really real hot subject for you. It's that the treatment of people over there, especially in where we've been talking about in the Uyghur. Did I say it right? That's this time.
Uyghur.
I'm gonna get it right. I'm gonna get it right one of these before the night. I will say it right. Uyghur. I did it. I think I got it right that time. Yeah, it's the treatment of those people, because it's pretty, for anybody. I mean, that could be a whole show in itself. You really look into that. Just you can get involved in try to get involved with people that are trying to make a difference in that. But there's only just so much that can be done without political backing.
Well, you may have heard of the Florida Splendid China theme park that was in Kissimmee, and that's where I was associated with a group called Citizens Against Communist Chinese Propaganda, and that's where we went to spend our Sunday afternoons and mornings to protest. And
I'd never heard of that before. And that was one of I've come down here for vacation. Austin's shaking his head, and he's lived here his entire life, and that's one of those. It's one of the I'm like, why have I never heard of this before? And then, because you said it was
Especially
shut
that close.
down.
You said Kissimmee?
Yeah, was it
Yes.
2003, 2004? Is that when you said when it stopped?
December 31st, 2003, it shut its gates after 10 years.
I've never even heard of it. I've been in Florida all my life.
Good.
Yeah. I mean, in my perspective, 2003, I was only like 8 or 9, but still, no one in my family's ever talked about it.
I was graduating high school, so I wasn't paying attention to that either. I don't think.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it was just, it's one of those. It was down there in Four Corners.
That's,
About a mile or 2 or 3 miles from Disney World.
yeah.
Wow.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So, but I was able to interact with my Uyghur friends, my Tibetan friends, my Mongolian friends, the Taiwanese, the even Chinese and Americans came to support this effort to drive them out, because they were lying about Tibet, they were lying about Mongolia, they were lying about the Uyghur people, and we just put up a resistance. Protest demonstrations, we held some conferences, built a website. Back then we didn't have YouTubes to be able to put the videos up, but we tried.
They've got it's amazing entrance for this thing. As we were describing that, I brought it up. This is what the entrance kind of looks like now.
Oh, wow.
Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah, it's just,
those are Buddha heads.
I know.
There were just... No, I think that's not new. Those are that has been completely redone now.
Has that been done? I was just like,
there's a development over there now.
Yeah, I was like, that was I'm like, oh my God. Like they just trashed the place.
That was part of the some of the exhibits, heads of the Buddhas off the exhibits.
Yeah, that's one of the things too. It's been kind of going on. It's just, there's been a lot, especially over there in that part of the Middle East. There has been a lot of destruction of archaeological sites with gigantic Buddha statues that have been just destroyed. I mean, I know, I think there was a few in Afghanistan that were just
right. The Bamiyan.
Yeah, it is just tragic, because here's something that, I mean, obviously can't get that back. I mean, it is gone.
No, they blew it up.
Wow,
But
they blew it up.
that's nothing. But that's nothing. The Uyghur haven't done that. The only destruction of Uyghur history has been done by the Chinese. And I must mention that I got away from my political activities when the Chinese government called my house from the consulate in Houston, Texas, and threatened my family members.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they were losing face, and that's something that's not appreciated.
Well, they also lost $480 million.
Oh, from the theme. Yeah, that does. Yeah, I'm going to actually research that thing too, because I've never heard of this before. And I'm looking at these things. I mean, they've got Disney style, like, images of like what this theme park was supposed to look like. And like you said, now we end up with, it's basically an abandoned property. It's being probably developed.
Yeah, it's been. I found some pictures, some satellite pictures, not long ago of the park and what it looks like now, and they've got a whole development already built up in there.
Yeah, it's one of those. I mean, like, I think I got another one here. It's like, this is what it looked like after they after it got shuttered.
Mm-hmm.
It just,
I
everything
walked
just
through it then with a video camera.
Yep, but it's just one of those. I mean, this was a pretty elaborate thing that they built too.
It was a beautiful theme park, and all we asked for was to change change the signs. We'll stop everything. We'll stop. No more demonstrations. No, nothing. If you just talk with us about changing the signs, we'll stop everything. And they wouldn't even return a letter. So we already knew how they felt.
Wow. No, well, I mean, good job on, you got, that's, I mean, there's a lot of protests and stuff that don't even come close to those kind of those results. I mean, I would say that was you had a pretty dramatic result in that protest. So that's, I mean, congratulations on that. I mean, that's a,
oh, they blamed it. They blamed it on the economy after 9/11.
That's usually, that's what it was. But
that's like now everything's blamed on COVID. Hey, yeah, we COVID, yeah.
No, that's, well, hey, it's like I said, we're approaching the hour here. Yeah, everybody, you need to go to my-moo.com. It has the books that Jack has put out in regards to his great-grandfather's work, along with his work and research that he's done into that. Then you can also go to jack.churchward.com as well as his other site. He's also on Facebook. So check him out. If you got further, purchase the books. If you got, requests for more information, just reach out to him on those sites. But Jack, I want to tell you, I appreciate you coming on. I really do. I had a really good time. I mean, hopefully you did too. I mean, it's
absolutely
great. It's, thanks to everybody for watching, like I said, but have a great evening. Like I said, we wish you and the family the best. Like I said, and we'll definitely keep in touch. And as if things come along, please pass some information over as your work, for the people over there. Uyghur, right?
Uyghur,
like Igor, Uyghur,
or Uyghur is easy, I guess, easier for people to say.
Yeah, it's one of those. Well, I'll get it. I promise. You. Next time I see you, I will have it down. All right. Well, Jack, thank you very much, sir. Have a great night.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. This was brought to you by Nanny Cakes, Nancy Burke. Go to Nanny Cakes 407 on Facebook or give her a call at 407-923-2898. If you're in the Central Florida area, you can save 15% off your cake order by just mentioning that you saw that here. We also are at threebeardspodcast.com, Instagram, Twitter, the TikTok. We're on TikTok. We're also, I said Pinterest. We're pretty much everywhere trying to get the word out. We're also rebroadcast on Patriot Radio. Download the Zeno Radio app, courtesy of JJ Beard Company. Go to jjbeardco.com and check them out. Thank them for bringing us on their show. Appreciate everybody watching. Everybody have a great night.